Welcome to week 6 of PSSL 6240 Political Violence Terrorism here at George Washington University Safety and Security Leadership Program. Just start off with announcements. Just Adobe Connect session we had last Thursday. I think it went pretty well. Good job for the group that was briefing, and I think we had a good question and answer session. What I mentioned at that Adobe Connect session that I want everyone to take heed is that for the third one, that's next Thursday, I want to do a job talk about careers, talk about how to advance, get a job with the federal government, intelligence community, law enforcement community. So if you have questions, please let me know, and I can kind of answer them at the Adobe Connect session. As well as if you have experience getting a job in the federal bureaucracy or trying to break into the IC community, law enforcement community, please let me know as well, so I can let you talk at the next Adobe Connect session, so you can share those insights with your classmates. So we'll have that, and the next Adobe Connect session will be again 30 minutes for Group 3 Boston Marathon intel failures, and then 30 minutes for the job talk. Next announcement: Paper 2. Paper 2 is due tonight. I'm taping this on a Sunday, so make sure that 11:59 that you get your paper in. If you didn't brief on Thursday, so please get that in to me no later than 11:59 p.m. tonight. Week 5 review, again, good discussion we had. Counterterrorism strategy U.S. A lot of people commented on the Van Evera article. First, the Van Evera, he talks about WMD security a lot, and keep in mind this was written in 2006, and we've done a lot securing WMD in the 10 years since the article was written. So it's a little bit of a falsehood that he has there. And a lot of you probably went over WMD security in the previous topic. So I just want to clarify that. The other thing is I did not like the Van Evera article. I think I sign it just because to get a different perspective, but it was very bullet point, very critical, full of criticisms, which is fine, but anyone can write a bullet point criticisms of any administration so far. I suspect that this was written at the height of the Iraq War when it was going badly in 2006, and I suspect that this article is a reflection of that. EU strategy. The article, the Monar article assigned was before the EU was, or before the Paris attacks, before the Charlie Hebdo attacks, before the Belgium attacks. A great paper for your final paper would be, and I'll give you carte blanche to write it, is the EU intel failures that allowed for ISIS to conduct the attacks in Belgium and in Paris the last few months. There's mounds of information coming out now that I think would be relevant if you want to write a paper on that. And I ask you, if you're going to do that, and that'd be a great paper topic, is to focus on 2 or 3 things the EU is doing. Not a holistic look, but there's a couple of issues, and some of the article, Monar article talks about it, and some of the news articles out there talk about everything from PNR data to border security to refugees to lack of visa permits between EU countries. Focus on a couple of those issues and go in depth on those, and I think that would be a great paper to write for your final paper. And then the Israeli comparisons, and I think they're justified. The U.S. does things a lot worse than the Israelis do. In my lecture, and the Gora lecture touched on the things that Israel does that the U.S. can learn from. Everything from better local area alerts to integration between strategic and tactical intelligence to more flexible bureaucracies that I talked about. So just that's a good segue or good point, again, if you're writing this in your final paper to bring up. Okay, so week 6 preview. Week 6 is documentary week. There's excellent documentaries that I assign that I think are, they're family friendly, for lack of a better term. They're also very interesting even for the non the non-intel, non-security related professionals. So if you want to watch it with your wife or your significant other, I think those documentaries are actually a pretty good movie night, for lack of a better term. So just assignments, the 9/11 report. I hand out, again, the final chapter with the recommendations. And when you're reading through that chapter, just ask the question, are those recommendations implemented? And would those recommendations stop either a 9/11-like attack or another similar attack on that scale? And also ask, again, and that's one of your question you're going to ask in your final is, why didn't those recommendations stop things like the Fort Hood shooter, the Boston Marathon attacks, the underwear bomber? So keep in mind, again, the question is, despite these recommendations, despite the billions, trillions spent, how come we still have these intel failures? So as you go through this subject, please keep that question in the back of your mind. A National Geographic documentary, again, 9/11. It talks about, it's based on the 9/11 report, and it goes through 9/11, what the 19 hijackers, how they became radicalized, how they got in the country, and how they conducted their attacks. You are only required to do disc 1. There's 2 discs, and if you go on the YouTube, it's broken out into various discs. So only disc 1, which is about 90 minutes long. Again, a great documentary, and as you're going through the documentary, think, where were the failures in intel and law enforcement, and how the terrorists exploited those seams in our intel and law enforcement community. So think that, again, while you're watching that documentary, think about that in the back of your head. NOVA, Inside NSA. It's the 9/11 report does not cover the National Security Agency. This documentary does, and it's the only one that I've seen that covers the NSA role or lack of NSA's role in 9/11. Great documentary. About 30-40 minutes are dedicated to NSA's role in 9/11. The other 20 minutes are dedicated to NSA spying. And keep in mind, this was produced before the Snowden revelation, so it's a good, covers 9/11, but covers as well as the balance between security and civil liberties. BBC documentary on the underwear bomber. Great documentary. Again, fantastic documentary. And it covers the underwear bomber. And again, as you're watching it, think how the underwear bomber exploited the seams in our civil aviation to conduct his attack on Muttalib back in 2009. What were the intel failures? What were the failures in watch listing? What were the failures in predictive analysis? So just, again, that's a great documentary. And then finally, the Fort Hood report. We talked in week 2 or 3 about Fort Hood being whether it was terrorism or not. In this report, we're going to talk about the intel failures related to Nidal Hasan, how the Army missed his radicalization, and how the intel community failed to know that a Army officer, an Army major, was communicating actively with a known or suspected terrorist, and why that information wasn't wasn't coordinated, and why it wasn't disseminated down to a level that could have resulted in action before Nidal Hasan conducted his attack on Fort Hood. So that's week 6. Again, lots of documentaries. Hopefully this will be a little bit more of an interactive week, and I look forward to hearing about your comments on the discussion board.